Mahogany Jackson, a young Birmingham woman who was tortured earlier this year, some of the abuse even recorded.
On the night of February 4th, 2024, a young mother in Birmingham, Alabama typed out what would become her very last words. She sent a text to her family, a message that carried an edge of unease, almost like she knew something was wrong. Hours later, that same family would be begging for answers, because Mahogany Jackson, just 30 years old, was gone. And not gone in the way someone leaves town, but gone in the most chilling way a family could ever imagine. Her body would be found the very next day, brutally discarded, and the people she thought were her friends would soon become the center of a shocking investigation. This story begins with that final message, the last proof of her voice before her world was silenced forever. Join us in Chapter 9 of the Grim Chapters as we examine the events that led up to the horrifying murder of Mahogany Jackson. Mahogany Jackson wasn't just a name in the headlines. She was a young woman with a full life and a family who adored her. Born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, she was 30 years old at the time of her death, a mother raising a daughter who were her pride and joy. Her family described her as loving, vibrant, and protective, someone who was always present for the people she cared about. She wasn't perfect, but she carried a warmth that drew people in. And that's why the news of her death struck so painfully close to home. To her family, she wasn't just another victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a mother, and a friend. The loss didn't just leave behind grief. It left behind an emptiness, especially for her children, who were forced to grow up without the comfort of her arms and her voice. To really understand how Mahogany ended up in that nightmare, we have to rewind back a couple months. December 4th, 2023. That was the day everything shifted. Police came out after what they called a domestic incident, and Mahogany was arrested. Now, the charge itself wasn't the kind that usually makes the news, but the fallout. That was huge. Because that arrest cost her the one thing she needed most, her housing. Just like that, she and her little girl didn't have a place to stay. People close to her would later say, almost with guilt in their voices, if she had somewhere to go, maybe none of this would have happened. But she didn't, and so she ended up right back in Birmingham. And going back meant being around the same faces, the same drama, and one bitter problem that hadn't gone away: a missing gun. Now here's where it gets tense, because the people circling around Mahogany weren't random enemies. These were people she knew, people who called themselves friends at one point. Brandon Pope's house became the spot, the place where everybody seemed to gather. Around him were the names that would later fill police reports: Taja Lewis, Francis Harris, Jeremiah McDowell, Giovanni Clapp, Blair Green, Sinia McCall, and Ariana Robinson. It's chilling when you think about it, because these weren't strangers lurking in the shadows. They were right there in her life. And then, in the middle of it all, there was someone folks only ever called Blue. No full name in the reports, no clear identity in court papers, but that name kept coming up. Stories in the neighborhood said Blue already had trouble in his past, and his presence stirred the pot even more. The real flashpoint, though, was a stolen gun. Word was, somebody in the group thought Mahogany had it. Whether she really did or not, it almost didn't matter, because to them, it was personal. It wasn't just about a weapon. It was about respect, betrayal, and pride. And when you mix all that together, the air around her turned dangerous. By the time February 4th rolled around, all those grudges and bad blood finally came crashing down on Mahogany. That night, she thought she was walking into a friend's house. But what she walked into was a trap, already set. The first stop was the home of Brandon Pope. That's where things started spiraling. Witnesses later said she was forced outside, stripped naked and beaten, stomped, kicked, and humiliated, while others stood around recording it like it was entertainment. One voice in the background can even be heard saying, "Put her in the trunk." And soon after, she was dragged off the street like she wasn't even human. From there, Mahogany was taken to a second location, If the first stop was about intimidation, the second was about cruelty. She was handcuffed, pistol whipped, and spat on. At one point, she was sexually assaulted while others laughed and filmed. They demanded the password to her phone, promising her freedom if she gave it up, but it was a lie. A cruel game meant to strip away her hope piece by piece. What makes this even more horrifying is that nearly all of this was documented, on video, on phones, spread around in group chats, and eventually across social media. It wasn't just an attack, it was torture turned into content. And as the night dragged on, Mahogany went from trying to survive to being completely trapped, surrounded by people who had no intention of letting her leave alive. Now here's where the story takes a strange turn. The text message. Early that morning, Mahogany's mother and sister both received a message that seemed to come from her. It said she was being held hostage, and it even included her location, pointing them toward the Serenity Apartments in Birmingham. On the surface, it looked like Mahogany's last desperate attempt to call for help. But as the details came out, people started questioning if Mahogany was the one who actually typed it. Some believed one of the people inside that apartment, maybe someone who suddenly felt guilty or scared, sent the message pretending to be her. It's the only thing that explains why the words didn't sound like Mahogany at all. Either way, that text was the lifeline that set everything in motion. It's what brought her family and the police to the apartments, and even though she wasn't there when they arrived, that one message cracked the door open on the truth and set off the chain of events that would bring the killers into the spotlight. In the early morning hours of February 5th, just after 2 a.m., when a passerby makes a chilling call. Around 2:19 a.m., police were informed of a body lying out on 17th Street Southwest, right near Laurel Avenue, in the 1700 block. Now, the locals in Birmingham had a name for that stretch of road. They called it Dead Man's Road because it had been used before as a dumping ground. And that's exactly what it was again. When officers got there, what they found was heartbreaking. A young woman's body had been shoved under an abandoned mattress, discarded like trash. Medical responders looked her over and confirmed what the eye could already see. She had a single gunshot wound, and she was already gone. Right there, at the scene, detectives didn't hesitate. They classified it as a homicide. Family members rushed in, only to be met with the worst confirmation imaginable. But here's the thing. This wasn't just some random dump site. Investigators were already starting to see connections between where her body was left, the phone messages, and the disturbing videos that had started to surface. While the crime scene gave very little, the suspects themselves left behind the kind of trail you just can't erase in today's world. See, while this was happening, they weren't just attacking her, they were recording it. There were videos of Mahogany being beaten, stripped, and humiliated, and those clips were passed around like some twisted kind of trophy. Some of it was shown over FaceTime calls, some of it leaked onto Facebook Live, and word spread faster than the police could even keep up with. Now, here's where it gets even more disturbing. Instead of going to the authorities, a couple of people decided to hop on social media and brag. They dropped names, showed clips, and turned the whole thing into a sick spectacle. And that meant Mahogany's mother ended up seeing pieces of her daughter's torture online. As painful as that was, those very same videos became the key. Police used them to put together the timeline, to confirm who was involved, and to lock down suspects within 2 days. In the end, the clout chasing that fueled this cruelty is exactly what exposed it. And once those videos and digital breadcrumbs started landing in the hands of investigators, things moved fast, a lot faster than anyone expected. Within 48 hours of finding Mahogany's body, Birmingham police had already started rounding people up. First came two women, 26-year-old Taja Lewis and 23-year-old Sania McCall. Both were arrested on February 5th, the very same day Mahogany's body was discovered. At first, people thought maybe it ended there, but no, that was just the beginning. By midweek, police dropped a bombshell. 7 suspects, all connected, all facing charges. The list read like a roll call of people Mahogany once knew. Giovanni Clapp, Blair Green, Taja Lewis, Francis Harris, Senia McCall, Jeremiah McDowell, and Brandon Pope. Every single one of them charged with capital murder, kidnapping, and in some cases, sexual assault. Those the kind of charges that can carry life without parole, or even the death penalty in Alabama. And then, just when people thought it couldn't get worse, an eighth name appeared. On March 1st, 23-year-old Ariana Robinson was arrested and charged as well. With her, the number climbed to 8. 8 people now accused of turning on Mahogany, trapping her, torturing her, and taking her life. Police said she knew every single one of them, which made the betrayal cut even deeper. Now here's the question that's haunted this case from the start. Why? Why did 8 people decide to destroy someone they once called a friend? The official story has never been crystal clear, but a few theories keep circling. One is the stolen gun. Some believe that accusation was the spark that lit the fire. Others say it wasn't just about the gun, it was about money. Rumors swirled that Mahogany owed money to one of the women she stayed with. Then there's the theory of jealousy and social drama, the kind of toxic mix that can turn small fights into deadly feuds. Maybe it was all of it together: pride, money, grudges, and betrayal. What's clear is that none of those reasons, no matter how you stack them, ever justified what was done to Mahogany. Once everybody was in custody, the focus shifted straight into the courtroom, and that's where this story really slowed down but stayed just as heavy. Each of the suspects had to stand in front of a judge, one by one, and hear the charges read out loud. You could feel the weight of it. Capital murder, kidnapping, sexual assault, charges that you don't walk away from. And the judge made that clear right off the bat. No bond, nobody's getting out while this plays out. By the spring of 2024, the indictments came through. A grand jury looked at all the evidence, the videos, the FaceTime calls, the witness statements, and said there was more than enough to move forward. Prosecutors didn't hold back either. They told the court this wasn't some random crime, this was planned, brutal and merciless, and they're going for the harshest sentence Alabama allows. That means either life without parole or the death penalty. Now, of course, the defense teams are pushing back. They're trying to separate the roles, hinting that maybe one person was more guilty than another. But the prosecutor isn't having it. Their stance is simple. This was a group act, and everyone who played a part is equally guilty. While all of that was happening in court, life outside kept moving, and the pain for Mahogany's family never stopped. Her mother, her siblings, and most of all, her little girl. They're the ones carrying the weight every single day. A daughter without her mom, a family with a hole in it that will never be filled. The community tried to show love in the only way they could. They held vigils outside the apartment complex, gathering under candlelight to say prayers, to cry together, and to send pink balloons into the sky in her memory. On March 1st, they came together again, this time for a full celebration of life. People shared stories, played her favorite songs, and tried to honor the good times instead of just focusing on the way she died. But even in those moments, the questions hung in the air. How could this many people turn on one woman? Why did no one step in when it mattered? And why was her pain shared like it was some sort of show? Those thoughts don't fade. For her family, the grief is mixed with anger, and that's a wound that hasn't even begun to heal. Now here we are, months later, and the story isn't over. The suspects are sitting in jail waiting for their trials, and the families on both sides are waiting for answers they may never really get. Was this really about a stolen gun? Was it about money? Or was it just jealousy, mixed with grudges and fueled by ego that spiraled into something this dark? And then there's another layer that makes people uneasy: the role of the internet. Those videos, those lives, those posts. People watched it all unfold in real time. Some even shared it, laughed at it, treated it like content instead of what it really was: a woman's last hours. Legally, maybe they'll never face charges, but morally, that stain doesn't go away. At the center of it all is Mahogany, a young mother who wanted to build something better for her daughter, who trusted people she thought were her friends, and who was betrayed in the most brutal way possible. Her death has become a warning, a reminder of how fast loyalty can flip, how dangerous pride and clout chasing can be, and how trust, once broken, can lead to unthinkable tragedy. And until the verdicts are read, until the family has some closure, her story is still being written. Thank you for watching this chapter to the end. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you are new to the channel and would like to continue watching true crime cases like this, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next chapter.